Since childhood, days seemed to last an eternity. Summer was a vast field of possibilities, afternoons took forever to fade, and the end-of-year festivities felt like they arrived only after an endless wait. However, as we grow older, time slips away like sand through our fingers. Before we realize it, the years pass in the blink of an eye, and what once was an eager anticipation of something new turns into the feeling that everything repeats itself in an accelerated cycle. But why does this happen? Does time really pass faster, or is this perception rooted in something deeper within us? Carl Jung, in his exploration of the human psyche, suggested that our relationship with time is closely tied to the process of individuation, the journey we take in search of the wholeness of our being. In youth, we are immersed in discovery, shaping our identity, and experiencing new moments that leave deep imprints on our memory. Each significant event builds a rich and extensive narrative, making days feel dense and full of novelty. But as we reach adulthood, and even more so in old age, this narrative becomes more repetitive. Days seem to blend into one another, and new experiences become rare. The brain then registers fewer novelties, and as a result, we feel that time speeds up. This perception also has a neurological basis. Time is a subjective construct of the mind, and our brain measures its passage based on the events we experience. In childhood, everything is new. Learning to walk, talk, read, form friendships, and explore new places. The brain works intensely to process and store these details. In adulthood, however, routine takes over, and days become less memorable. Weeks go by without significant changes, and time turns into a succession of indistinct moments. As Jung suggested, without deep engagement with both inner and outer life, time stops being something intensely lived and becomes just a continuous flow. There is also a philosophical and existential aspect to this perception. Time is not just a matter of clocks and calendars, but of meaning. Jung believed that throughout life, we go through different psychological phases, and that the second half of existence should be dedicated to reflection, integrating past experiences, and searching for deeper meaning. However, modern society pushes us into an accelerated routine that prevents us from fully embracing this stage. It's not that time is moving faster. It's that by failing to cultivate meaningful new experiences, we stop perceiving it in a rich and detailed way. Perhaps the answer to this acceleration of time lies in reclaiming the curious and exploratory outlook of childhood. When we allow ourselves to learn something new, travel to unfamiliar places, or shift our perspective on life, we create new landmarks in our memory and consequently extend our perception of time. Jung would say this is part of our individuation process, the restoration of the fullness of human experience, where each moment is once again lived with meaning. But there is something even deeper behind this acceleration of time. Aging brings an unavoidable confrontation, finitude. And as the shadow of death becomes more visible, as Jung emphasized in his theory of the shadow, we tend to avoid looking directly at this reality. Time seems to slip away faster because we try to escape from what it will inevitably force us to face. Could this acceleration, in the end, be a reflection of our fear of confronting our own mortality? If time seems to move faster as we age, perhaps it's because, deep down, it has become a mirror of our relationship with death. Jung argued that in the second half of life, we are naturally called to a process of reflection and integration of our existence. However, modern society, obsessed with productivity and eternal youth, pulls us away from this calling. Instead of looking inward and confronting life's transience, we try to artificially extend the illusion of control. The irony, though, is that the more we resist the passage of time, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. This subjective acceleration can also be explained by the concept of time compression in memory. Since new and impactful events leave stronger imprints, the early years of life seem longer when we look back. But as we grow older and our routines become predictable, we accumulate fewer of these temporal anchors, and the years pass without significant milestones. If each day becomes merely a repetition of the previous one, it's only natural that, in retrospect, An entire decade feels like it disappeared in an instant. However, Jung would remind us that there is a way to slow down this perception of time, reconnecting with the self. In his view, the self is the totality of the psyche, the integration we seek throughout life. For Jung, time should not be just a straight line leading to the end, but a cycle of transformation and growth. This means that if we live on autopilot, letting days blend into one another, time will continue to accelerate. But if we actively engage with life, seeking new experiences, reflections, and meaning, we can reverse this acceleration. This brings us to a fundamental concept in analytical psychology: the importance of rites of passage. In traditional societies, life was marked by ceremonies and transitions that gave weight to time. There were rituals for childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age. These celebrations created clear psychological milestones, helping people feel that they were truly experiencing each stage. In the modern world, however, these rites have been lost. Transitions happen without us even noticing. And without these reference points, our memory becomes a vast, uniform space where time flows without resistance. The solution to this acceleration of time may lie in finding new ways to mark our existence, creating personal rituals, exploring unfamiliar territories, cultivating new learnings. These are ways to reclaim the richness of temporal perception. If time seems to speed up as we age, perhaps it's not just a trick of the mind, but a sign that we need to live with greater intention. And in the end, maybe this acceleration of time isn't just a problem to be solved, but an invitation to see life with fresh eyes. After all, time is not an enemy, but a silent teacher, reminding us that every lost moment can never be reclaimed. If time feels like a continuous flow slipping through our fingers, the solution may not be to try to hold on to it, but to change the way we inhabit it. Jung believed that to slow down subjective time, we needed to engage in the process of individuation, a deep journey toward the wholeness of our being. This path involves integrating different aspects of our psyche, including those we avoid or repress. And among these neglected parts, we often find the very experience of the present. In the modern world, we are trained to live in the future, planning, anticipating, accumulating, or trapped in the past, reliving memories or regrets. But when do we truly inhabit the present? Jung suggested that individuation required a reconnection with the unconscious and with the symbolic aspects of life. This means that to slow down our perception of time, it's not enough to simply seek new external experiences. We must also cultivate a deeper awareness of our own existence. The practice of mindfulness, which has roots in Eastern thought but resonates with Jungian psychology, can be a powerful way to expand our perception of time. When we become fully aware of the present moment, each instant gains depth. Small details of everyday life, the wind on our face, the sound of leaves, the texture of an object, become vivid. And when time is lived with greater presence, it ceases to be just an indistinct succession of days and becomes a rich tapestry of meaning. Another essential aspect of reclaiming the density of time is rediscovering creativity. Jung saw creativity as one of the most authentic paths to individuation, as it connects us with the unconscious and allows us to express hidden aspects of the self. When we create, whether it's painting, writing, making music, or even reinventing the way we live, we bring something new into the world. This act of creation introduces moments of intensity and meaning into our existence, making our experience of time more memorable and significant. Beyond that, there is a spiritual dimension to our perception of time. Jung believed that the second half of life should be dedicated to spiritual deepening, not necessarily in a religious sense, but as a search for deeper meaning. When we ignore this calling and try to artificially prolong youth through the repetition of empty habits, time continues to accelerate because we are resisting a natural process of the psyche. But when we embrace this transition as a journey towards something greater, time can take on a new quality, less oppressive and more meaningful. The acceleration of time, then, is not an inevitable phenomenon, but a reflection of how we relate to life. Time expands when we allow ourselves to fully live, explore new paths, immerse ourselves in creativity, and cultivate a sense of presence. Jung would remind us that it is not time we should try to control, but how we choose to inhabit it. Because in the end, perhaps the real secret to slowing down time is simply to live so deeply and authentically that each moment becomes eternal. If time speeds up when we live on autopilot, then the antidote lies in the intensity of experience. Jung saw individuation as a journey of awakening, an invitation to become truly conscious of who we are. But in practice, how can we make time feel richer and more meaningful? One possible answer lies in how we experience novelty. Studies on time perception show that new events create more markers in memory, making periods of great change feel longer when we look back. This explains why childhood and youth seem to last longer. Everything is new, and each discovery leaves a deep imprint on our psyche. But as we grow older, we fall into predictable patterns and stop exploring the unknown. Time then passes without leaving traces. This means that to slow down time, we need to reclaim the spirit of discovery. Traveling to unfamiliar places, learning a new skill, changing the way we interact with the world, all of this can expand our perception of time. But Jung would warn us that true transformation doesn't come just from external experiences, but from the meaning we assign to them. A journey, by itself, is just another event on the timeline, unless we allow ourselves to absorb its lessons and be changed by them. Here lies a crucial point: the depth with which we live each moment. Time doesn't just accelerate because we repeat routines, but because we live superficially. In modern times, we are constantly bombarded by information and stimuli that fragment our attention. The endless scrolling on social media, for example, creates the illusion of engagement, but actually dilutes our perception of time. A day spent this way is unlikely to be remembered, because nothing in it had enough depth to be clearly registered. Jung emphasized the importance of symbols and the unconscious in giving life depth. He believed that when we lose touch with the symbolic world, we live shallowly, and this superficiality accelerates the passage of time. Reconnecting with archetypes, myths, and profound stories can be a way to recover this density. After all, when we immerse ourselves in a captivating narrative, whether in a book, a film, or a personal experience, time seems to slow down because we are fully present in that moment. Another crucial factor is our relationship with death. Jung saw the denial of death as one of the greatest obstacles to a full life. Modern society avoids talking about finitude, treating aging as something to be fought against. But the more we flee from death, the faster time seems to pass, because we live in constant denial of the very nature of existence. When we accept our mortality, time takes on a different dimension. Each moment becomes more precious because we know it is finite. The acceleration of time, then, is not just a psychological phenomenon, but a reflection of our relationship with life. For those who live deeply, each day is a new experience. Each moment carries weight and meaning. And perhaps that is the real secret: to live in such a way that time no longer feels like a river rushing toward its end, but an infinite ocean of possibilities. If the acceleration of time is ultimately a reflection of how we inhabit our existence, then slowing it down requires a profound shift in perspective. Carl Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming whole, cannot happen without a conscious relationship with time. This means that if we want to reclaim the feeling of a full and expansive life, we need to relearn how to live with meaning. But how can we do this in practice? One path lies in reclaiming what Jung called the inner reality. In the modern world, we are conditioned to value only what is external: achievements, productivity, recognition. This obsession keeps us constantly projected into the future, always chasing the next goal, the next challenge, the next validation. The problem is that this race has no end, and while we are trapped in this cycle, time dissolves without us truly living it. Jung proposed a return to the symbolic world, where meaning is found beyond the surface of things. This symbolic world can be accessed through introspection, dreams, art, spirituality, and contemplation. When we allow ourselves to dive into this universe, our relationship with time shifts. Moments that would otherwise go unnoticed become filled with significance. The simple act of watching a sunset, listening to music with full attention, or getting lost in deep thought can make an instant feel infinite. Moreover, there is a key concept in Jung's work that directly connects with our perception of time. The individuation process requires us to confront our shadow. The shadow, in his theory, represents the repressed aspects of our psyche, what we avoid acknowledging about ourselves. And one of the greatest shadows of modernity is the fear of time passing and ultimately the fear of death. We live in a culture that glorifies youth and treats aging as something to be fought against. But Jung would show us that this denial of old age keeps us trapped in an illusion. We want to keep living as if we had infinite time, and this illusion prevents us from valuing the real time we do have. When we accept that we are finite beings, that each day is an unrepeatable gift, time takes on a different dimension. It becomes slower, denser, more precious. A practical example of this can be seen in how traditional cultures approach the passage of time. In many indigenous societies, old age is not seen as a decline, but as the peak of wisdom. Elders are the ones who live with the most presence because they know each day could be their last. They tell stories, share experiences, and observe nature with a patient gaze. To them, time is not an enemy, but an ally. Looking at our own lives, we might ask ourselves, are we living as if we had infinite time or as if each moment were sacred? Are we merely existing or truly inhabiting time? Jung would say that the answer to the acceleration of time is not in trying to hold onto it, but in giving it real meaning. Because in the end, time only rushes past when we are not truly present in it. If time seems to slip through our fingers, perhaps it's because we are not living it deeply enough. Jung taught us that time perception is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a reflection of how we relate to our own existence. And one of the most powerful ways to slow down time is to live with purpose. When we find true meaning in our journey, time stops being just a straight line pushing us toward old age, and instead becomes a cycle of growth and renewal. This happens because psychological time, the time we actually experience, does not follow the same rules as chronological time. A single day filled with meaningful experiences can feel longer and more memorable than an entire month lived mechanically. The key, then, is not to try to control time, but to fill it with what makes us feel truly alive. Jung believed that each of us has an inner calling, a unique destiny to fulfill, and that ignoring this calling leads to a soulless existence where days blur together and years pass like a haze. When we are out of alignment with our true path, life feels monotonous and predictable, and it is this repetition that makes time feel accelerated. On the other hand, when we follow our vocation, whether artistic, intellectual, spiritual, or communal, our relationship with time transforms. Think of a moment in your life when you were completely immersed in something you love: writing, music, a deep conversation, a project that demanded your creativity. In those moments, time can feel suspended, as if you've entered another level of existence. Jung saw this as a connection with the collective unconscious, a deeper dimension of the psyche where time is experienced differently. Another way to slow down time is by learning to value rituals. In modern society, we have lost many of the rites of passage that once marked important transitions in life. In traditional cultures, every stage of existence was celebrated with ceremonies that gave weight to time: childhood, coming of age, marriage, entering old age. These milestones created clear divisions in the psyche, helping to give a sense of continuity and purpose to life's journey. Without these rituals, life becomes a homogeneous flow, and this lack of psychological structure can make the years pass without us truly feeling them. Creating personal rituals, whether through journaling, meditating at dawn, or reflecting on the lessons of each year, can help restore this sense of temporal depth. Small moments of introspection allow us to recognize time as something sacred rather than just a resource to be consumed. Ultimately, Jung would remind us that the real challenge is not to avoid the passage of time, but to learn to dance with it. Time is the raw material of life, and our perception of it is directly linked to how we choose to live it. If we allow ourselves to feel, explore, create, and reflect, every moment can become an eternity. And perhaps that is the secret to transforming the feeling that time is slipping away too fast, making every moment truly matter. When Jung spoke about the journey of individuation, he suggested that as we mature, our relationship with time should become more introspective and meaningful. However, in modern society, the opposite often happens. As we grow older, we distance ourselves from the depth of experience and fall into a routine of empty repetitions. Time seems to fly because we are no longer truly present in it. But what if, instead of merely watching time pass, we could actually inhabit it? For Jung, the path to this reconnection with time lies in self-knowledge. Individuation is not just an abstract philosophical concept, but an active process of bringing neglected parts of ourselves into consciousness, including how we experience time. Have you ever stopped to think about how you truly perceive time? Is it a burden weighing on your shoulders, an uncontrollable force dragging you along, or a fertile field where you cultivate meaningful moments? One of the biggest mistakes we make is believing that time can only be measured in days, months, and years. Jung would show us that time can also be measured in internal transformations. There are periods in life where, in just a few months, we grow more than in entire years of monotonous routine. This happens because psychological time is subjective. It expands or contracts depending on the quality of our experiences. This leads to a fundamental question. Are we merely counting time, or are we truly living it? The passage of years does not guarantee that we are becoming wiser, more fulfilled, or more complete. Aging alone does not bring maturity unless we take time to reflect on the life we have lived. Jung saw the second half of life as a crucial period for introspection, but modern society pulls us away from this opportunity by glorifying only youth and productivity. As a result, many reach old age with the feeling that time has passed too quickly, that life has somehow slipped through their fingers. Perhaps the acceleration of time is a sign that we need to reconnect with something greater than ourselves. Many spiritual and philosophical traditions suggest that time can be experienced more fully when we are in touch with the sacred, not in a strictly religious sense, but in the recognition that life has a deeper purpose. When we allow ourselves to contemplate the mystery of existence, we naturally slow down, realizing the grandeur of each moment. Jung believed that contact with the unconscious helped us find this deeper meaning. He saw dreams, myths, and art as windows into a dimension where time is more fluid, less rigid. Perhaps this is why moments of creation, contemplation, or deep inspiration give us the sensation that time stands still. When we are fully immersed in something meaningful, time stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. So, the real question is not how to stop time from passing quickly, but how to make it more meaningful. And this only happens when we stop counting the days and start valuing each one of them. As Jung taught us, life should not just be lived. It should be understood, integrated, and above all, deeply felt in its fullest expression.